Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happens. So we return once more to the land of Oceanrim with Alzack, the superior scholar, and Phudo, the bullet slayer. Now, last time we had a run-in with Serpentina and it did not go well. So Alzack and Phudo have turned their sights onto the Mage's Academy to beg for help, particularly to Alzack's master, the headmistress of the school, Lady Firefall. Now, they decide to go together this time, not just to kind of split the party off. And I actually asked them, could you guys stay together so I don't have to throw two games at the same time? And they said, yeah, sure. Phudo's already got that magic disguise that makes him look like an 8-year-old kid dressed in a little cute sailor outfit. He just has to make sure he doesn't talk too much because he still sounds like a kobold. So they go to see Lady Firefall, and it's not too hard to get in. He's a graduate student, and he just graduated. He had the adventures in the Sphinx's library some time ago, so he kind of has the headmistress's ear, not only because he's basically a prodigy, let's face it. He can teleport and read minds and divine things with simple, mundane objects and crap like that. So he's very high up on the totem pole of recent graduate students. So when he wants to go and see the headmistress, nobody stops him. So he goes in with his, quote-unquote nephew, and it's about what you would expect, like a big, Dumbledore office with tons of dusty old tomes and posters of phoenixes just as they're exploding to life, and little dioramas of spheres that represent planets and other spheres that represent, the planes of reality and where they are in conjunction to each other. And they move constantly with no wind to push them about. And there's a big oaken desk covered with papers and, a side table for tea time and all kinds of stuff like that. It's a great big office with a little spiraling staircase so you can get to the upper shelves of all the bookcases and stuff. And Lady Firefall is, of course, ever the diligent worker. She's a middle-aged elven woman, and in this setting, elves are actually very, very tall. They're 8 feet tall, so they literally look down on other races because they're built like just flat poles, and it doesn't make them any more powerful. That was just some flavoring we added in. And Lady Firefall is a beautiful elven woman. She's got the olive skin and the dark red hair and the olive green eyes. She's very, very pretty. And she started this Mage's Academy several hundred years ago. Not quite far back enough to have witnessed the first calamity that everybody knows about. But far back enough that, she's an elf. She's very long-lived. She's been in charge for a very, very long time. She's seen many a generation of young magic users come and go, and she's very happy in her position to make sure that people use the gift for good and for right and not for selfish reasons. Cough, cough, Alzack. But he's always been very careful about who he deals with and who he runs information with, so that it doesn't get back to Lady Firefall that he's not quite on the up and up when it comes to finding the money to pay for his tuition. But if he doesn't do anything on school grounds, there's not a lot that would point her to him that he's actually a criminal mastermind at the end of the day. And of course she's happy to see him, and I tried to do like a Princess Celestia kind of thing. She's very soft-spoken, very graceful. She uses words like faithful student and protege and affectionate terms like that to sell the fact that she knows that Alzack is a prodigy, that he can do pretty much anything he puts his mind to. He was a straight A student, et cetera, et cetera. Giving him access to the Sphinx's library on the day that there was a raid was probably the best thing that had happened in a while, because the guardians and the different librarians got sideswiped. Diana, the Sphinx, almost got killed, and that was because he waved her in that there were bad guys running around. So he's up in the standings in her mind. And, of course, when he wants to see her for some emergency, she is eager to listen to what he has to say. And the first thing Alzack does is whip out the papers that he's been drawing. I don't know if I've mentioned it each time, but Alzack had a habit of drawing the unusual monsters that they faced. So he had a drawing of the ice elemental. He had a drawing of the flying polyp. He had a drawing of, eventually had a drawing of the eyeball monsters. Whenever they had some downtime, or if they killed a monster and they could linger near the corpse for a while, he would make almost like a medical drawing. And he pulls out all these drawings and he says, "You're not going to believe this, but..." And he tells her everything that has happened so far, from the Sphinx's library forward, their entire journey through the Lost District, seeing that the world is coming apart, that the lizard folk have been behind so much stuff, but they're not there to destroy the city or destroy the world. They're there to save it, and they have done this before, and, here's all my evidence and stuff like that. And she just kind of sits back, a little slack-jawed, because if your greatest student, came rushing in and said, "The world is ending, here's all my proof," and all the proof is, scientific and, medically drawn and all these things he could not have possibly seen, like the flying polyp, if there's a record of that somewhere, and Lady Firefall has probably read every book in the Academy because she's just that long-lived, or, read through them and approved them. So she's probably seen, drawings of this creature before. And there's no way that Alzack went running to the elemental plane of water and had enough time to study this creature and then come back and not tell people that he just dimension hopped and stuff like that. So she believes him, if only for all the reasons that he lays out. He's got 8 or 9 things that he couldn't possibly know, but all of which fits together. And of course, the Mages Academy ego is a little bit bruised because they usually detect, large blooms of magic, and, they didn't detect the Beholder Spelljammer blowing up a building, X number of feet below the surface. They didn't detect the lizard folk creating mana bombs under their noses and stuff like that. I mean, there's big things like earthquakes and exploding kobold burrows that they can see with the naked eye, or the magic that they detected within the walls of Oceanrim on the surface, where the lizard folk were sucking the soul out of that poor woman way early on with Mattias and the Oceanrim scholars. They detect stuff like that, but apparently their instruments don't go, a mile down into the earth. So this was right under their noses. And, of course, she believes him. And, of course, the first words out of her mouth is, "Have you thought of anything to help prevent this? If we were to hunt down Serpentina and the other half of this cult, assuming there are no further lieutenants or pockets of them anywhere in case there's a third contingency plan, what do you think you should do about this? What should we do about this? The city should not be shorn off in such a way that tens of thousands of people go careening into the sea, dropping a district of the town onto Cthulhu's head so they can close the portal behind him. There has to be another way that doesn't involve so much bloodshed." Alzack already has a plan for this because, again, it was 2 weeks between games, so he had a lot of time to think on this. And he goes, "I'm going to do research on portal opening and portal closing, much like the lizard folk do with those staffs, but I want to rig like a big magic circle or a big spell where I can just do it on my own and not kill anybody and stuff like that. And she goes, Alzack, that would be, for something that size, it would be a spell circle a mile wide. Your body could not handle the pure arcane might. You would need hundreds of wizards of your caliber, standing in conjunction. Some of them would have to be standing on water if the portal centers on the Oceanrim Bay, and that's where Cthulhu's going to stick his head out. There's no place to put the chalk in some places. And she kind of shoots him down for a while, but he thinks he can do it, and he decides he's going to go off to the Sphinx's library to do research. And of course, as soon as he turns around, Lady Firefall kind of looks down at Phudo, who was in disguise. And of course, her little half-moon glasses have true sight on them, because she's the mistress of the Mages Academy, and you can't sneak anything past her. And she goes, "You're rather unusual, aren't you? I've never seen one of your kind with blue scales before." And Phudo is immediately taken aback, but she doesn't seem hostile. She's like, there's got to be a reason that you're running around with Alzack. So Phudo kind of, not as elegantly as Alzack, but does his best to explain what's going on, that his people have been decimated, that this is getting way bigger than any conflict between the kobold and the lizard folk outside of Oceanrim. Now it pulls Oceanrim in, and now it's going to pull the whole world into this conflict if they don't put an end to it. And she's older, wiser, elven. She's understands that Phudo's not there to wreck anything or steal anything or kill anybody, so she allows him onto the Mage Academy grounds so long as he stays in disguise and doesn't cause a panic. And she gives them 1,000 gold in case they need particular spell components to experiment or do something different, because most of the time you can eschew materials and things like that. If they cost 1 gold piece, well, yeah, the Academy has plenty of that. You don't need to buy it. But bigger spells like Resurrection that take 5,000 gold worth of diamonds or whatever the hell it used to be. Of course, that's divine magic, but you get what I mean. There are some materials out there that cost a lot of money, and Alzack is basically going to have to start experimenting to see if he can create something big enough that won't kill him when he casts it, something powerful enough. It's if you've read the Aragon series, which I'm sorry if you did, if you try to channel silver, you can't stop the spell, and it will probably knock you out, if not send you into a coma. The magic is too powerful for a mortal body and stuff like that. Alzack has to go and figure out the math and the algebra and the angles and the equivalent exchange of alchemy on the span of a mile-wide magic circle to slam this portal closed as soon as it opens, so Cthulhu doesn't even have time to come out. As soon as it tears open, he wants to chant the spell and slam it shut again. And again, the elemental plane of water and the material plane are scratching up against each other, so this would be slapping a Band-Aid onto it that would hold long enough for the dimensions to drift apart again. And I was like, Alzack, this is basically pulling a spell out of the epic level handbook. It's the Armageddon spell does 200 d6 fireballs worth of damage. You could decimate armies that way, and then you take 200 d6 to your body. It will destroy you. The pure arcane might of trying to channel that through your body is not going to work. You will die. And he's like, well, I don't want to die, but I don't want the world to end either. It's this self-sacrifice never enters his mind. He's like, I got not so much a hero as he could have been, but he's like, I need... He comes back after a while from the Sphinx's library, and he's like, I need a mana battery or a power source or something big to like channel through so that I don't serve as the power source for whatever this is. Number one, it'll kill me. Number two, it'll probably fail because this is like 20th level magic and he's only like level 11, level 12. You know, they're getting up there, but it's still way too much for one guy to slam shut a mile-wide portal by himself. So Lady Firefall, after seeing that he has done the math, and this might be possible, but this is the best lead they've got right now, is that he needs to go and seek out an artifact from the Mage Academy vaults. And Phudo looks up at him and goes, "What is that?" And Alzack goes, "Well, the Mage Academy vaults is where they keep magical items and artifacts that are too dangerous to be wielded, or things that should never see the light of day." And Phudo looks over at Lady Firefall and goes, "Magic items like what?" And she names off a few wicked-sounding things, you know, like leather gloves that when you touch somebody they die of asphyxiation, or vampiric swords, or you know, gloves that when you touch something it bursts into ash, and just all these horrible things that people not ought to be using. You know, the actual sorcerer stones that you know, suck the life out of one person to extend the life of another, like really bad, really powerful juju that, you know, you not ought to be messing with. And she said, you know, among those things, you know, most of them are pretty plainly evil and just sealed away, but others are very powerful artifacts that could serve as your power source for, like, to fill in, you know, X equals what, to finish out your algebra there, to get this spell cast and not kill anybody. And he goes, "Well, what artifact should we look for?" And she says, "It is called the Great Earth Sphere." And she tells him about it. It's basically, I hate to say it this way, but it's basically a magic dirt clod. It's covered with vines and moss. It's about the size of like a softball, maybe a little bit bigger. And it is a piece of the earth that has been preserved by magic that is from the time before civilization. So like the primordial earth. This is like the last piece of this world before man sprung up, and before elves, and before anything like that. And we started to tame the land and till the earth and stuff like that. And a bit of it was saved by the elves and preserved, like under glass, under spells, under everything else. And it was used as like a conduit. But the only thing was, it was very, very potent, very raw, primal magic. Like, you don't even want to, like, hold it. You want to wear gloves. And, you know, you don't want to cast magic with it because it'll give you, like, you know, use magic device of, like, 50 or 70 or something. It will eat you, you know, or it will, like, blow out all your circuits and you fall over, like, with smoke coming out of your ears, and you go into a magical coma. You know, there were so many people, even elves, the very powerful race in this setting, trying to use this to, like, grow forests instantly, or to burst open the earth to make canals for boats to go by and stuff like that, that just, they fall over dead. It's too powerful. But, you know, Alzack is a prodigy, and he's handled a lot of magical artifacts, a lot of, you know, anything that uses the use magic device skill. He's got that maxed out, and he's got magic items that help him do that and stuff like that. And the rules are very simple. You know, if you use a magical artifact like that, you've got to make the DC to use it properly. But if you fail it by 10, it will kill you. Whether it works or not is up in the air. But if you fail the not really save DC, gosh, the use magic device check, it will kill you and, like, blow out your brain and your internal circuits, and you'll go into a coma and die, and that'll be it. And Alzack's like, "Wow, really? Well, if that's the best thing we've got, then, you know, we'll have to go for it. You know, where are the where are the vaults? I'm a graduate student. I've never actually seen them. I've only heard stories. And Lady Firefall kind of gets up from her desk and she smooths out her dress and she goes, "Come with me." She leads them out into a courtyard where there's a small building, small stone building. It doesn't even have doors on it. It's just like an archway. It looks kind of like a mausoleum, like it's kind of like concrete and a little bit of decoration, but not a lot. And it's just stairs that lead underground. It's just a hollow shell. And she leads them down there, and they find what I can only describe as like a stargate made of stone. It's got like arcane runes all the way around it, and it's got like a black, glittery, like watery surface to it that when you step through, it will take you elsewhere. Now, probably not across the galaxy, but perhaps into a different plane of existence. And she explains to them that there are two things they need to do in order to obtain the Great Earth Sphere, because she cannot guide them personally. She is, the headmistress of the entire academy. If they fail, she's got to have some contingency plans. So it's just going to be the two of them. And it's separated into two parts. Part one is the antechamber, kind of like the entrance area. And in the antechamber, they will find a key that will allow them into the vault proper. And then they can go to the vault, use the key, go inside, and find the Great Earth Sphere. And if they can bring it back out, and Alzack can study it and make sure his level's high enough, make sure his used magic device is high enough, etc., etc., he can use that as a power source to slam shut this portal that is no doubt coming, because these cracks are forming all over the place, and they make a vaguely circular shape. When you view like a regional map, it's like it's an arc that leads in a circle, and Oceanrim is right in the middle. So they go, all right, so we just have to go in, get this key, come back out, go to the vault, and we can get it there. That's fair enough. And Lady Firefall kind of holds up a hand of warning, and she goes, "Be careful. The antechamber is a defensive structure. It will test you. It is almost purely random. You can, if a thief wandered in there, you notice there are no doors or no locks. You can just wander in if you like. If a thief were to wander in there looking for treasure, he could wander through 600 rooms of trips and traps and dungeons and monsters and all kinds of crap, because he is aimless. He is just looking for loot and money and things like that. But you are going for the Great Earth Sphere in particular, so perhaps the antechamber will judge you worthy and allow you access to this key. It's basically like the boss key from Zelda. It's big and golden and it has a ruby on it and little horns and stuff like that. We just kind of ran with that as the joke. You got to go get the boss key. But basically she tells them that time and space don't mean anything. Like, they could go in there and be in there for a few hours and come back and a month has gone by. It's completely random as to whether it's going to be to their advantage, or they go in and they come out, 100 years from now. Well, by then it'll be too late. But this is the best shot they've got. And Lady Firefall kind of takes Alzack's hands and goes, "I will start making contingency plans. I will act as though you are not coming back. And if you do, it will be that much greater. But, I trust you, my most faithful student, to go in there and to bring the vault key back so that you can get the Great Earth Sphere." So they pack up on food, they pack up on potions, they pack up on, supplies. They think they're going to be down there for a while, because, if the antechamber can conjure 600 rooms for a thief, Lord knows what it's going to do when it's just testing somebody to see if they're worthy. It's not a dungeon that makes any sense. It's not a place or a location. It's probably like a long string of algebra written somewhere that says, if this, then this, for X number of rooms before it allows you to have this key that you're looking for. So the antechamber is exactly what it sounds like. It's a randomly generated dungeon. And I know I have preached and preached and preached to never do this, but this is in good context. It's a place that will actively test you before it allows you to have its greatest treasure. So it allowed me to just kind of throw some darts at the wall and make up whatever I wanted, because it doesn't have to make sense, because it's not supposed to make sense. So I just got to fly with all my tricks and traps and monsters and not worry about it. So after they do some preparation, Lady Firefall meets them back at the entrance of the Antechamber after a few hours and said, I will go to the Church of Iomade and see if I can meet with the High Priest or the Pope or Inquisitor, whatever you want to call that. I guess the High Priest. And see if we can gain some new allies in this, because it's best to have contingency plans in case something goes wrong. If a mile-wide portal opens and tentacles start coming out of every manhole cover and killing all the citizens, wouldn't it be nice to have 1,000 paladins out on the streets rushing people to safety and swinging their swords everywhere? So the Mages Academy and the Church of Iomade have never really gotten along that well, because that's religion versus science, basically. I mean, you have to go to school to learn magic, so I basically treated it like a branch of science. And Iomade, for those that don't know, is basically like the Paylor of Pathfinder. It's the Judeo-Christian kind of Catholic sun god, justice and mercy and, hail the light and stuff like that. It's a bland religion that doesn't really mean a lot when it comes to writing its own lore. But Iomade, and I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly, and I don't care, so don't correct me in the comments. Iomade is a very simple god to follow, so it's hard to lose your paladin powers or your cleric powers or anything like that. So Lady Firefall's going to go talk with the High Priest, or the Hierophant, or whatever, probably Hierophant. Just go talk with the Hierophant and basically tell him, hey, the end is nigh, we need some muscle. Like, if things go tits up, we need some muscle. And they go, well, that sounds great. One faction leader approaching another, at least they'll listen. That would be like if they were approaching the Red Lady or the Hierophant or the mistress of the Mages Academy. They're basically on even footing with each other because they're all leaders of their respective factions. If one wants to talk to another, chances are they'll listen. So Phudo and Alzack journey into the Antechamber, and it's basically a Stargate. I stole it. And they step through, and they are transported to another land, another very alien-looking world. And I say, you find yourselves what looks like halfway down in like a ravine, and you're standing on a tree root that is like 50 feet wide that goes in all directions, and you can see a cave carved out in front of you with stone stairs. And they journey into this dungeon. Now, I know as a storyteller that there's not really a lot of story that goes on when you're in a dungeon, because there's like, oh, they went into this room and they fought this monster, and then there was this trap and then they fought this monster. Then there was this pit and they jumped over it and then they fought this monster. It's just them playing the game. It's not really like the story heavy portion. But just as like some of the highlights, because if I remember correctly, the dungeon that I drew on a grid paper was 60 rooms long. So they were there for 2 game sessions. There were only 2 of them. Phudo and Alzack, they didn't send anybody else in. They didn't grab any Mage Academy people. They didn't grab any clerics from the Church of Iomade. They went in straight away, just the 2 of them. So they had to move forward very carefully because they didn't have a dedicated healer and they didn't have a dedicated tank. And both of them were long-distance DPS players, a ranger and a wizard. So they had to be very careful. So it took them several days to journey through the antechamber, and it's like 60 or 70 rooms. And, I'm not going to tell you about every single room or we'd be here for hours, but they had like, oh, here's a rig that holds crystals, and there's 6 other rooms, and at the end of each room, each hallway is a crystal. You got to bring the crystal back, and, it's yellow, orange, red, blue, green, purple, and, you spin it, and then the door opens, or, there's a big spike trap. You gotta get all the way across, and there's no nothing to grab and no bridge, and the bridge is invisible. You just gotta feel your way along it. They throw sand across it like Indiana Jones, or just all kinds of little things, and eventually they led into some more dangerous stuff. Like they came across one room that looked like it was housing a dragon's hoard, and in the center was a ruby the size of Alzack's head. And, having gone through all these tricks and traps so far, they took one look at it and they were like, nope, and they slammed the door shut again. And inside, I had hidden a gold golem that would use the ruby as like a big giant eye, but they didn't even go in. Like if they'd like, oh, gold, and started like brushing it into their sacks, it would have been a nice boss fight, but they looked in, they were like, nope, not gonna do that. They slammed the door again. So eventually, they ran into some really nasty stuff, like a cannon behind the door. If you've ever heard of that trap, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a door that's rigged with like a rope, and you turn the doorknob and you pull it open, and pulling on that rope ignites a cannon that shoots you in the face. And they had to navigate their way through that and not get their heads blown off. And they started to encounter chalk messages, like written on the walls and stuff. Like somebody had been there before them that said, like, be careful around this corner, or, go this way in the upcoming maze, and things like that. And eventually they came across that person's, like, campsite where they were seen last, or something like that. There was the ancient remains of blankets, and the ancient remains of where there was a cooking fire, and the dust that used to be like beanie weenies that they were eating, and stuff like that. Baked beans with hot dogs, and bits and pieces. Like this person had been wandering ahead of them, but how could somebody wander ahead of them if the dungeon is randomly generated based on what you're looking for, etc., etc. And it served as like a hint system for them so that they didn't get overwhelmed by the antechamber's deadly traps. And eventually they came across like a greater courtyard. This is completely underground, and occasionally a giant like tree root would be snaking through the room that they would have to climb over or crawl under, things like that. Eventually they came to a much larger cavern that was filled with stone statues, like life-sized stone statues of people in like battle poses, or people trying to cover their eyes in horror, or trying to run away. And I say, you guys look around, you see that the ceiling and the walls are full of holes and tunnels, and eventually, hearing the movement below, a horrific creature comes down, one with a great central eye and gnashing teeth and stalks with 10 eyeballs on the end of it, and they go, oh God, it's a beholder. There was a beholder imprisoned down in the antechamber as well. There were other monsters as well, and there were like rune carvings on the doorways to like hold them like animals in a zoo. But they had sealed a live beholder down here, and apparently it had zapped a whole bunch of people that came there before them with its turned to stone eyeball laser. And I was like, what are you guys gonna do? And Phudo's like, I run for the other door. And being that he's a ranger, Phudo can roll really high on the reflex save, and he had, what is it, uncanny dodge, where if you make the check, then you don't take any damage at all instead of taking half damage. So he he leaps and dodges and jumps over statues and leapfrogs across debris to make it all the way to the other door. There's a statue with its hand on the door, like that guy almost got away, and Phudo like shoulder checks him aside, and it breaks the statue into a million pieces, and he throws the door open. Alzack, come on! We can't fight that. And Alzack does not have uncanny dodge, so he takes a necrotic ray to the face. And if I recall correctly, it was obnoxiously powerful. It was like 10d8. And even at 11th level, an average of 40 damage sucks. So Alzack took like 46 necrotic damage, like straight to the face, and I rolled the d8. And because I think the necrotic ray also destroys magic items. At least it did in the description, because Pathfinder and D&D 3.5 are very different, but for beholders. But the necrotic ray can destroy a magic item at random. So I rolled the d8 to see arms, legs, chest, head, what kind of stuff like that. And I go, Alzack, you take this necrotic ray right to the center of your chest, and your glasses and your headband burst into ash. And so all the fast reading spectacle stuff that he had going on, and I think his headband had like intelligence, +1 intelligence or +2 intelligence on it, a really expensive magic item. They both just burst into ash. Oh, Alzack was so mad. Destroying magic items is not something you should do very often in D&D or Pathfinder or anything like that, because you're basically robbing them of a very expensive item. But it was a beholder, and I was like, you're glad. It looks like the cartoon where Daffy Duck shoots the shotgun and it like explodes into his face. Your face is blackened and your hair is all swept back, and your glasses and your headband are gone, so your hair goes all wild. It's like, I continue dashing forward, and Phudo is like, I shoot up at the beholder to try and like chase it off, and he manages to peg it with one of his crossbow bolts, but of course that's not enough. It's a fucking beholder. So Alzack like leaps through the doorframe after Phudo, and the beholder, it hovers through the air. It's like sphere-shaped. It's really horrible. And it hovers through the air to try and chase after them, but there is a force field on that doorway that it cannot pass through, because the arcane runes that are all around the archway, all across the threshold of the doorway, are meant to hold it in that room. So it like bounces up against like a Star Trek style force field, and it cannot leave to chase after them. So Phudo, of course, slams the repeating crossbow cartridge in and like starts unloading on it to chase it away, and it screams at them and it gnashes its teeth and it shoots its eyeball lasers, but it can't get through the force field until finally, it's been peppered with enough crossbow bolts that it flies away back up into its all the holes that are in the ceiling, so it can hide and not get shot. And like Alzack slams the door like, oh god, and he's like scrubbing on his face because he looks like he's been like rolled in charcoal or something like that. He was so mad because he lost like 2 or 3 magic items in one go. It was like, it could have been his rings, it could have been, he had a lot of money and he spent it on a lot of different magic items, so he lost 2 or 3 like in one eyeball laser. He was so mad. But eventually they finally came to an even bigger chamber that hosted like an elder earth elemental, like the great big ones. He was spherical in shape, and he had like an old man's face. And they were like, is this the great earth sphere? It's like, he's the size of a small moon. He's at least like 100 feet or 100 meters in diameter. And, he's got trees growing off of him and vines that kind of anchor him to the ground so he doesn't, like, float away. He's kind of, like, floating around the room a little bit like a planet. Or if you've seen Dragon Ball Z, he's, like, the size of King Kai's planet. It's tiny for a planet, but it's still a planet. He's big. And turns out he can talk. So they go to talk with him. Are you the Great Earth Sphere? No, but if you've come this far, I imagine you're looking for the Mage Academy Vault key. And they go, really? What do you know about it? Why are you down here? The Mages Academy promised me peace and quiet so that I could nap for a while. And again, he's got this old man face. He's got a beard made of moss. And he's just kind of impatient with these mortal creatures that have come and woken him up. So they're very careful. I hope they don't like set him on fire or anything, but because he could just land on them and they would die instantly. But they know well enough to not screw with him. So they politely ask him, how he got down there, where the key was, etc. And he tells them that the Mages Academy promised him like sanctuary, solace, peace, and quiet, and he'd been down there for like X number 100 years, sleeping peacefully, because nobody ever makes it that far. The Beholder kills the vast majority of people. And he says, well, this is how I got down here. I'm just here to nap. Do you mind? And things like that. Kind of like shuffling them onwards. Like, do you know where the key is? Do you have the key? Are you the guardian of the key to the vault? And he goes, no, not really, but I can show you the next passage. And like the vines that are working their way up and down the wall of this vast chamber kind of part themselves and they can see another passage. And far down this passage is an outcropping over a great abyss that has a platform on it and a little pedestal, and of course floating in the air, spinning like a video game item, is a massive golden key inlaid with a ruby the size of an egg. And Phudo's like, mine! And he dashes down this hallway. Phudo, no! But no trips go off, no traps, no monsters, no nothing else. And he grabs up the key and he's like, wow, look at this. It's like as big as his forearm. It's obnoxiously big. And I go, you got the key to the Mages Academy vault. Good job. And Phudo's, it's really shiny. And of course, kobolds love shiny things. So he's like rubbing it on his cheek and licking it and like on his mouth, like making sure it's real. I was like, I was gonna say, Phudo, if you were much younger than you were now, you would want to put it in your mouth, but you kind of did that for me. So, so they put that in their bag of holding, and of course, on to a side passage. There's another one of those like Stargate things, so that they can leave. And Phudo and Alzack kind of look at each other and they go, this is it. This is the Mage Academy vault. And so they grab the key. They both got the key by the shaft. And they're like, do we just walk through while we're holding it? Or there doesn't seem to be like a lock anywhere. So they go, okay, 1, 2, 3. And then they step through. And they are back outside again. And Lady Firefall is still at the top of the stairs, like her hand up as though she's been waving them goodbye. And they go, what happened? And Lady Firefall says, was there something else? Did you need more food? And they look at each other, and then Lady Firefall gets a better look at them. And, they can see that Alzack is missing his glasses and his headband, and he's got, like, the shadow of a beard. And, Phudo looks a little busted up because he took some damage from such and such trap and things like that. His arm is wrapped with gauze and stuff like that, and their food bags are nearly empty, and etc., etc. And Alzack and Phudo look at each other, and they look at her, and they go, how long were we gone? And Lady Firefall kind of leans back for a moment, and she looks them over, like clearly they've been gone for some time. But she says, about 4 seconds. And they go, really? Hey, time and space. Time and space worked in our favor this time. We were down there for like 3 or 4 days. And, they hold up the great big obnoxious boss key that they found. And Lady Firefall goes, well, that's great. That's fantastic. Why don't you spend the rest of the day resting. I haven't left for this meeting yet because it's only been like 4 seconds since you left. Why don't you rest and recuperate and eat and bathe and all that good stuff, and I will seek out some allies from the Church of Iomedae before you go into the vault. And they're thinking, yes, it would be a good idea to have like a tanky paladin or a tanky cleric to cover our ranged DPS asses, because they got shredded up pretty good in the Antechamber. They realized that, 2 is not enough to save the world, to save Oceanrim. They are going to need a third party member. And the Church of Iomedae is, of course, swarming with law-abiding, light-worshipping paladins. So Lady Firefall says that she will talk with the Archbishop or the Hierophant or whatever, and at the very least come back with an additional ally to help them on their journey through the vault. Because the vault is much the same. It's a very dangerous place. They've got the key to get in, but all the stuff they keep in there, it's not safe. So she is going to come back with like a paladin or a cleric to go with them. And they go, wow, that's great. All right. So they retire to eat and bathe and kind of recuperate themselves. And Lady Firefall kind of goes down to like her carriage and with the midnight black horses and the guy dressed to the nines driving the carriage and et cetera, and goes off to the Church of Iomedae to seek aid. And that was kind of where we left off. So the Antechamber was a massive dungeon, and I know I probably didn't explain it as well, because the story doesn't last as long, because, saying they went to this room and then this happened, they went to that room and then this happened, that's not really a story. They played the game. But roughly it was like a 10-hour dungeon, so it was quite large, trust me. But now we are bringing in a third party member. Now, if you remember, Mattias the Prowler did not play well with others, but I was like, 2's not enough, I need another person. So I pulled in another player, this late in the campaign, from the Church of Iomedae. And we will meet her next time here on D&D Stories. Keep gaming. Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!